Gorgeous Shar, how are you? Thank you for joining us, both of you. Appreciate that. And I think we are almost caught up here. G West, Grant Avius, how are you? Welcome to our chat room for the first time. Styles, welcome to our chat room for the first time from West Philly. Good to see you. All right, he's a Broad Street bully right there. And let's see here. I think we are all caught up. Good to have you here. And Bassmaster, good to see you. Smoking Joe, Gloria, the gorgeous Gloria from Casual Conversation. Nice to see you. Now, a good way to support what we do on this show is by hitting that subscribe button and ringing that bell. That lets you know that we are on here 7 days a week. I'm Monday through Friday. Lynn Wallington is on Saturday. Michael W. Hall on Sundays, except this weekend, Lynn is filling in for Michael, so she'll go back-to-back on the weekends, and we appreciate that. The Super Chat is open. It's also a great way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis, so thank you so much for doing that. Dave Hurley's here, everyone. The Dave Hurley. We appreciate him. And the gorgeous Jessica McCreary has arrived, everyone. We're going to get going in 10 seconds. Mark Sims is our guest. Let's have some fun tonight because we are talking ET contact and disclosure all night long. Here we go. From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. You can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. I'm telling you, I have been wanting to have this guest on for a long, long time. Because, you know, when you're an ET contactee, you really believe and know when someone is telling the truth about their own contact. And Mark Sims is an educated man. He's a scholar. He's an educator. And he's someone who had to learn a very strange way that the road to extraterrestrials is very real and not something out of a sci-fi book. In 2012, Mark came across a video called The Disclosure Project, which prompted him to register and participate in CE5 protocol. And this really helped him learn what he needed to do after getting contact. And we're going to look into that. This goes a lot deeper than just having a couple of aliens come by and say, "Hello, Mark, how's it going?" No, we're getting into the real deal tonight. Mark Sims, welcome to Spaced Out Radio for the first time. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. How are you?
I am doing really well, and I'm excited and honored to be here. Thank you so much, Dave.
I am very excited to have you here as well. And, you know, I mean, you're new to this. You're new to the coming out party. You're an educated man. You're a scholar, if you don't mind me saying that. And I want to ask you, coming from that educational position where this stuff that we're dealing with, ET contact, is so unbelievable for many of your colleagues, many around the world, how did you survive deciding to come public? How hard of a decision was that for you?
Well, it was very difficult. It's 9 years now since my initial experience that totally blew my mind open to the reality of extraterrestrial intelligence and the strangeness of the existence of them. This isn't just about physical beings that are intellectually and technologically much, much further advanced than we are, but they're also extra-dimensional beings. And so what I've learned over the last 9 years is that the cosmology of the universe is very complex. And that adds to the confusion on this issue. But to your point or question, how was it for me? It was really difficult because when it was first happening to me back in 2012, I kept it to myself for a few days. And finally, when I confided in members of my family that I'd had a face-to-face and was still having a face-to-face contact with an extraterrestrial over a 13-day period, I did not tell my family that. I knew they would really think I was crazy. But I said, listen, something happened at the CE5 retreat that was led by Greer. I had a face-to-face contact as a consequence of my being there. And my family really thought that I had been drugged by Greer and insisted that I get a psychiatric and physical examination. And by that time in my life, I had started and sold my first company. I had also started a second company, a successful second company, and then I was retired and became a champion amateur ballroom dancer.
Very cool.
So, leading up to this, I had, this, successful business career, and then I took on ballroom dancing, and I was, just an overachiever is a good name for who I was back then. And so when I was telling my family this, their immediate conclusion or reaction is that I had been drugged, and they were concerned about me. And because we had a relationship with the University of Michigan Hospital through a philanthropic relationship, because my wife and I had formed a foundation and we were giving to some of our favorite charities, and the University of Michigan Hospital was one of them. My wife called the administration office and was able to get me a appointment immediately with the doctors at the University of Michigan. And that included a psychiatric evaluation, which ultimately landed me in the hospital. They involuntarily committed me.
Oh, my goodness. How did that feel for you? Because, you go into this having this experience, being very open and honest to yourself and trying to be honest with the people around you, and the people around you weren't even trusting you, Mark.
Well, and I understand that. It's quite a shock to them, as you can imagine, me saying I had a face-to-face contact experience with an extraterrestrial. And what's more is that my behavior had changed dramatically, because by the time I'd returned home to Michigan from California, and I was 3 days now into this communion experience, which was a merging of a energy or light being, what he called himself a celestial being who was clearly non-physical. He merged with my body, and we were in this state of what he called communion. And that was the mode in which we were communicating. And so I was having my mind blown through this, communication and through these experiences that were triggered and initiated by this extraterrestrial to explain to me the nature of reality and the nature of reincarnation and past lives. So I literally, by that time I had returned home, I had experienced a past life experience where I literally found myself standing in the shoes of another person and experienced the last few moments of that lifetime right before I was executed. And that is very convincing to an atheist, of which I was. I was an atheist my entire adult life. I was a devout atheist, you could say, and I didn't believe in reincarnation, nor did I believe in heaven or hell or any of the what I thought were superstitious belief systems of the world religions. I had just, come to the conclusion that there's no life after death, and to my great surprise, that wasn't true. And so my behavior now was very different once I returned home from these experiences that I had been having, and the information that was being relayed to me by Tejbar about what was coming, what was happening, what was coming, and the history of the Earth, what the true history of the Earth is, and what our relationship as a human family is to the extraterrestrial family, the star family, as I like to call them. So all that's a lot to take in, and it will, it's a bit like a deer in the headlights, even for somebody who was as successful and grounded as I was. I was showing, signs of different behaviors.
Now, for people who may not know, let's go deep into your education. You're a pretty educated man. You are somebody
Yes.
who has had a very educated life. You've had successful businesses. You're financially well kept. I mean, you didn't need this. This isn't something that was expected of you or that you even thought of or even wanted.
Right. And it all happened as a consequence of two things. One, in the early spring of 2012, I just happened to be killing time in my office at home on the computer watching YouTube videos. And this video pops up of the Disclosure Project, this event that took place back in 2001, and I had never heard of it. So I watched the video, I started watching it, and I was so, upset, I was just so engrossed in this story that people were telling about their encounters and their eyewitness accounts while they were in the military or in government positions. And these 20 witnesses were sharing these accounts, and I found them very credible. And they were articulate. And what I realized is that if what they were telling was true, and they were very convincing, I felt this was the most important story in human history, and I had to know the truth of it. Of course, I had known a bit about the UFO and ET phenomenon in popular culture, but I frankly thought that the UFOs that had been cited over the years were all advanced military craft that were kept top secret, and citizens of the world were just witnessing these top secret vehicles, and that UFOs were not of extraterrestrial origin. That was the conclusion I had come to. And so in 2012, to hear these witnesses give their testimony, I wanted to know the truth. And if this was being kept from the public, and I could imagine good reasons why that was being kept from the public, I wanted to know. And so when I did research on Greer, who had organized that event, and learned that he was a civilian and not a government employee or a military veteran like these other witnesses, I decided to do some research on him, discovered he had written some books, and I bought them and read them. And through reading those books, I learned he had been doing something called the CE5 protocol for many years, and that he claimed you could initiate contact with extraterrestrial intelligence through these meditative practice and protocols. I didn't initially get the connection between meditation and initiating contact. It seemed like a stretch to me. So I had time and the money to register and pay the fee to go to one of his 6-day retreats. As a skeptic, I really went with low expectations, but I was in Michigan in November, and Borrego Springs, California, and the Anza Borrego Desert seemed like a really nice getaway to spend a week and get some warm sun while it was freezing, in Michigan. And at the worst, I thought I would just, have a nice vacation and, kind of learn something new and try something very different. But lo and behold, on the 5th evening of this 6-day retreat, a ship materialized above our group. And I saw this thing materialize out of thin air. And when you see something with your own eyes, you know yourself, having been an experiencer, how convincing that is. And I knew without any doubt that what I saw was otherworldly. That was not a man-made craft. This was something that appeared to materialize out of a higher dimension. And the object itself and the way it was illuminated was of a divine nature. It really struck me with a sense of awe that this was a heavenly thing. I really, and as an atheist, this was my immediate reaction, that I was filled with some special, awe of a divine object. And I have a picture of that. I don't know if it's okay if I share my screen real quickly.
Yeah, please do.
your viewers of what this thing was that appeared above our group. So I'm kind of new to this interface. Let me do this real quick. And so can you see this?
Yeah, let me just add it in here. There we go.
Okay, so this was the object that I saw materialize out of thin air. I was looking exactly in the sky where this thing began materializing. And it was moving as well. So it wasn't stationary, it was moving, and it was very large. And as it materialized, I could continue seeing the stars behind it. That's how I knew it was not fully materialized as it kind of transitioned in. And then it dematerialized just as fast as it had materialized. And I recognized this shape immediately because my formal education is in computer graphics. And I had a mathematics minor in computer graphics. And I wrote programs that generated all sorts of interesting geometric three-dimensional figures. And one of those objects was what's called a geodesic sphere. That was invented by Buckminster Fuller. And what this is what's called a geodesic ellipsoid. It's the sphere, but elongated to be more egg-shaped or elliptical. And there was no mistake. I knew what I was looking at. This is exactly what I saw, without any doubt. And it had this corona around it that was defined by this dark edge between the craft itself and the halo that made up the corona, and then the facets that were outlined by these brighter edges of green made it, very clear to me that I was looking at something I knew what it was. I didn't realize at the time the significance of this shape. I have later come to believe that there was something very important relayed in the object that I saw initially that transformed my life. And you can see it's, here on the tapestry behind me. This is Amanda Sage's artwork.
That's beautiful.
And yeah, it's a really beautiful, one of my favorite of her works.
So, Mark, for you, as you all of a sudden decided to take this journey, and you went through the pragmatic steps with the loving people around you, you went and got checked out to make sure you were mentally stable, and you went and did everything that you were supposed to do, like a good skeptical atheist would. No offense, and I mean that trying to be complimentary.
Yeah.
What did you immediately notice in the change in yourself from the person you were to after having this contact to the person you became?
Well, I went through a very rapid transformation because, as I mentioned, I found the experiences I went through in the first few nights of my communion with Tejbar to be very convincing about what he was relaying to me through, telepathy and these downloads that I was receiving through questions I asked. So just for your viewers to understand, this being appeared at the end of my bed later that night. So when we were out in the desert as a group, there were 25 of us doing meditation at night until about 1 a.m. That night, that thing appeared about 11:11 at night, 11:11, 11:12.
Weird.
There's some disagreement about the exact time it appeared. I believe it appeared at 11:11. Other people looked at their phones and said it was 11:12. So, but anyway, every night over this 6-day event, we would stay out until 1 o'clock, and then we would pack up and return to our hotel. And I couldn't sleep when I went back to my hotel. I was ruminating now about the awareness and the certainty that we're not alone. And now my questions were all about who are they? Where are they from? What's their intentions? Why are they so reclusive and aloof? It isn't the government that's keeping them a secret from us. They themselves are keeping themselves hidden. And what's behind this? What's the motivation for that? And so I decided that I assumed something. I assumed that because this was such a major sighting, that we had seen, that we were probably being monitored. So I just made the assumption that, number one, that they had clearly exposed themselves to us in a very dramatic way. They were probably still monitoring all of us to see how we would react. And I assumed I was being watched. I assumed that they were highly technologically advanced and could monitor us without our awareness. And so I assumed that. And then I went about thinking about, okay, how would I reach out to them? Because I really, now that I knew they existed and they may be watching me, how would I summon them? I wanted to make contact, face-to-face contact, and interview them to get answers to these burning questions now that I had, that I was ruminating about. I couldn't fall asleep. I was so amped up. So I devised a greeting in the unlikely event that I was successful in summoning one of these beings through the meditation that I'd been learning with Greer. So I thought of a greeting that I thought would be important, and it had three components, three parts. The first was I wanted to express my deep gratitude. These beings would be so more technically and intellectually advanced than myself. For them, if they did appear in my room, I wanted to say thank you. I'm very grateful and honored. So that was the first part of my greeting. The second was that I wanted them to know that I wished for a relationship. And because I had heard from Greer and others there that had experiences and had developed relationships with extraterrestrials, that was possible. So I wanted that intention to be known in this greeting. And the third element was that I wanted to relay the deep trust I had, that I wasn't scared of them, that I would trust them unconditionally. So I made that a third part of my greeting. So after kind of reviewing and practicing this greeting in my head, I decided to begin this meditative practice, the CE5 protocol, sitting up in my bed. And I began doing this, and after a few minutes, I noticed there was this light, this foggy light blue light that was appearing in my third eye that I had never experienced before. And it began swirling like a whirlpool, like a pinwheel. And it began to coalesce and get brighter, and it formed this very well-defined sphere, very bright, light blue. And then these rings of light began coming into the sphere from the periphery of my vision. My eyes were closed the entire time this was happening. And after about a moment of these rings of light coming into the sphere, the rings stopped, and then slowly the orb or sphere of light began to morph into a humanoid figure. And it was just standing there in my mind's eye, just a humanoid, thin being of light persisting. And I had my eyes closed for probably five full minutes, at least 5 full minutes. I didn't want to open my eyes because I assumed as soon as I opened my eyes it would go away, and I was waiting for it to move or do something or fade away. And it didn't. It just stood there. So finally, I decided to open my eyes, and standing at the end of my bed was a being that you could only describe as a light being, because it was clear that it was transparent. I could see through it, but it was glowing brightly as well. So I have a picture of that I'm going to show again here. And let me just pull this up again. So this is a rendering of the being. Now, I'm a decent artist. In fact, the reason I went into computer-aided design as my major in college was because I love to paint and draw, and I wanted to become an artist, but my parents talked me out of that as a career because they felt I would starve to death. Because
Mark, I'm going to get you to hold on right there. We're going to come back with the alien beings, and I have a ton of questions for you because so much of this sounds familiar. It really does sound familiar. Mark Sims is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. What's it like to have a normal life and then get slammed by ET contact? We'll find out. Mark's the real deal. very popular in the field, and we're going to learn his story next on Spaced Out Radio. All right, we're clear. Now,
All right.
How fast was that?
Yeah, that went quick. That was a quick half hour.
That's what we do around here.
Do I have a moment to go?
You have 5 minutes.
Okay, I'll be right back.
Excuse me. Toe Tag, how you doing? Long time, no time. Trinitro Tulano, how are you, my friend? And who else has come on in here? The gorgeous Nikki has arrived. And let's see here. I think I'm caught up right now. I do. And let's see here. Hold on, I got to do a couple of things here. Damn it, the Habs are down 2-0. That isn't good. Carl Vibe, how you doing? And the gorgeous Lori Rosenfield is here, everyone. Lori Rosenfield. Aaron, how you doing, buddy? Jello Putin's been a while. The Michael Leger has arrived, everyone. The Michael Leger, the creator of that gnome right there. The Michael Leger. Molotov, how you doing, man? And let's go like this for now. I know. Hey, Super Duke, how you doing, buddy? And Luscious Jules, Brian, good to see you. Potential new bar. There you go. Yeah, Nicole Sackage, Bigfoot Rob wants you on his show. You got to do that one. When you have time, hon, you have to. Do me that favor. And watch out for the gnomes, Uncle Dale, Space Cat Cow, Eva. How are you? Let's see here. Just give you a couple of seconds. I just got to, let's do a quick fire chat update here. All right. Is it not in that group? I think it's in this one. All right. One fire is out. Let's see. Lone Butte residents. Hold on. This is new. Prepare to evacuate. Okay. Residents weren't required to go at this time. We're not evacuating anyone at this time, but we want people to be prepared so we don't have a situation like 2011 when we went door to door telling them to leave with nothing. Okay. Oh, and that added the fire. Shit. The fire seems to be heading to McMillan Road. That's where my boss lives. Oh, wonderful. Right. Blaze. Hitting hard with 2 tankers, 2 helicopters, 2 smaller bombers to douse the flames. Let's see here. Area is closed to local traffic only now. All right. Whew. God. Here we go. That's about 25 minutes from me. Hi, Lynn Wallington sneaking in behind there. There she is. Hold on. Give everybody a wave here, knowing that you're in the background. Look at that. There's Lynn Wallington, everyone. We love her. We love her. Hey, where's that handsome Dave Hurley? Where's that handsome Dave Hurley?
He's in Ohio.
Ah, damn it, Dave Hurley. I don't like that.
I know, right? But he's on the iPad. Say hi, Dave Hurley.
Hi, Dave Scott.
Hey, there he is. I'm a fan of his. All right, bye, Lynn. All right, we'll put her back in the background. So just so everybody knows, my area just south of me has been hit pretty hard today by forest fires. If by chance that I have to help my boss evacuate, Lynn is going to step in and continue the interview with Mark, because we do have a show to do. We don't stop shows just for a little damn fire around here. Hell no. That's what we got Lynn Wallington for. You know? Lynn Wallington, everyone. Big thank you to Jeremy, to Bigfoot Michigan Rob, and to 509er for the amazing super chats. Really appreciate the love that you show this. And everybody who's hit that subscribe button, thank you so much. We're going to get going here in about 10 seconds, so sit back, relax. We're about to turn the jets on right now. Second half hour of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for joining us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears. Want to remind you that if you missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. Mark Sims is here tonight on Spaced Out Radio. This is a guy, highly educated, business acumen, ballroom dancer. This guy was a pro, and I'm kind of jealous about that because you never see fat ballroom dancers like me. We're not that coordinated. But you know what? That's what they made ice skates for, people. Yes, that's what we made skates for. Mark is telling us an incredible story about his ET contact coming out of nowhere about 9 years ago. Mark, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave. So anyway, I left off where it was really exciting, that moment that I met this being standing at the end of my bed in my hotel room in Borrego Springs, California. And I think your viewers can still see this. Is that right?
Yes, it is up for our viewers on YouTube. Yes, they can see the extraterrestrial.
So I was mentioning that, when he first appeared at the end of my bed with my eyes open, I was stunned, first of all, and I didn't move a muscle. I wasn't sure what was going to happen. It was very clear immediately to me that this was a non-physical being. And that's because I could see through parts of its body, and it was scintillating. It had this light quality to it, and I could see through parts of its body. The illustration on the left is a pencil illustration, the first I did of what I saw, and later I did the picture on the right with Photoshop. I'm not that great with Photoshop, but I'm pretty happy with the way it turned out. So these, I just stared at him when he appeared at the end of my bed because I wanted to burn in my memory what I was looking at. And what I thought I was looking at was either a hologram or a projection of a physical being, like from a craft, or it was an energy being. As a light being, because I had heard of such things from Greer and others over this 6-day period, or 5 days up to that point. So, but I wasn't sure. But one of the things I noticed were these eyes. They weren't the classic almond-shaped eyes that you find with a gray. They had these weird little pupils that were darker than the rest of the eye, and I just assumed it was a weird ET eye. And so I gave it this greeting that I had been practicing, I described earlier. And I said this, I'm very honored and grateful that you're here. I hope this is the beginning of a lifelong friendship and that I trust you completely to do with me and my body anything that you choose. And as soon as I gave that greeting, and I gave it telepathically, assuming that it could understand me telepathically, it began walking from the end of my bed and approached me on my left side. And that was kind of freaky. But I sat still and I allowed it. I kept myself as calm as possible, and I did a good job. And when he approached me, I was looking up at his face, and for the first time realized that what I thought were pupils, I was just fascinated with these pupils. What I realized at some point when he was about 2 feet from my face is that I wasn't looking at pupils at all. They were holes in the back of sockets of a skull, of the eye sockets. And I could even see the sutures, the little like veiny lines that are within the eye orbital. If you look at a close-up picture of a skull and look in the eye socket, there's these little veiny lines, and those are the sutures that are the platelets inside the eye that buttress up next to each other and make those wavy lines. But the pupil itself, what I thought was a pupil, is the fissure, which is the hole from the eye socket into the brain, where the optic nerve of the eyeball goes and connects to the brain. That's the hole.
Right.
And so I was like stunned and, just double checking on the eyes. I was looking really deeply in his eyes. And then I noticed there was like patterns of light that I could see inside behind his eye sockets. And I found it fascinating. I was just gazing into his eyes. And then I noticed there was, his hand was moving. I'm going to stop sharing this screen.
Sure.
And come back on. So he started, I looked down because his hand was moving. And what I noticed is he had his index finger and he was moving very slowly towards my elbow with his index finger. So I looked down and watched him slowly coming towards me, and I knew he was going to touch me, so I was going to let him. And he touched me, and I felt a tingly sensation like a soft static electricity when he touched my elbow. And then he continued to push his finger into my elbow, and he penetrated my elbow, and I could feel his finger inside of my body. And then he continued through my left side of my torso, through my back. And as that's happening, his forearm, of course, is coming through, and I'm feeling this, part of his arm in my body, and it's starting to freak me out because he's inside of me, and I'm feeling this tingly sensation begin to get intense as more of his body is penetrating mine. But when his right shoulder began to merge with my left shoulder, I wasn't anticipating that. And when that happened, I was so surprised that I almost jumped up, and I forced myself to sit still because I had just given him my promise that I completely trusted him, and I wanted to honor that. So I forced myself to sit still, and he just continued to penetrate, and before I knew it, he was completely inside of me, and my whole body felt like it was electric. And it was freaky. It took every ounce of willpower to sit still through that experience. And then after a moment or two, that tingly feeling of static electricity began to dissipate. And another minute or two, and it was completely gone. I felt completely normal, but I was left with this acute awareness that there is somebody inside of me. There's another entity inside of me. There is no doubt. And so after a few moments of like, am I imagining this? The experience I had just been through was very real, but this awareness, this certainty that there was another person inside of my body, there were like two occupants. So then when I was certain, I asked my first question, and I said, "What is your name?" And using my lips and my vocal cord in my mouth, he said out loud, "Tezbar." And I said, "Tezbar?" And he said, "No, Tezbar." And I said, "Spell it." And he said, and he took my hand, and he went just like this. He went, Tezbar, Tezbar. Just like that, the whole gesture and everything. And so once he spelled it and he pronounced it one more time, I got it. And I began repeating it over and over again, and I could feel his satisfaction. So after that, I asked him my next question, and I said, "Where are you from?" And he said, "I'm from Earth." Now, that is not the answer I was anticipating at all. I'd been hearing from Greer and other experiencers over this 5-day period during this retreat of people who claim to have relationships and know of beings that were from Zeta Reticuli, Arcturus, the Pleiades, all these star systems. Nobody said that there were ETs that they had met from Earth, nor had I read of any such thing. And I'm like, are you sure? Can you explain? And he says, yes. He went on to explain that he had once been human, like myself, and he lived thousands of years ago. And when he died, he ascended to a place he called the astral realm. And I said, well, that sounds a lot like maybe heaven, like the Christian concept of heaven. And he said, yes, indeed, that's what it is, but it's much more complex and sophisticated than the Christian concept of heaven. And I said, well, and then he went on to say, I said, so where were you from when you were on Earth? And he said, I was from an area called Tierra del Fuego, and you would find it at the southernmost tip of South America. So I had never heard of Tierra del Fuego, and it was so clear, this message. So I stopped my interview. I wanted to confirm this because my mother was an academic psychologist, and I was well aware, since my mother was a psychologist, of, split personality, psychosis, these mental conditions that can be triggered that lead to, split personality disorder or, alter ego kind of scenario. And I felt possibly this very real experience had triggered this kind of psychosis, and that I was just simply talking to myself, kind of, wishful thinking kind of thing. So I had heard this, and I wanted to stop and confirm this place he had talked about, Tierra del Fuego. So I got my laptop, and I started up Google Earth, and I typed in Tierra del Fuego and hit the search button. And you know how Google Earth will zoom in and spin into the location. And I could see it begin to spin into the southern tip of South America, and right at the very southern tip of Argentina, in letters it said Tierra del Fuego, which is the southern province of Argentina. And you could have knocked me over with a feather. I was just, I knew without a doubt this was a real experience that I was having. And so before I put my computer away, I thought that I should do a Google search on Tejbar, the spelling of his name. It was so unusual. I wasn't expecting anything, but I thought I'd do it. So I typed in Tejbar, and there was one hit on the entire Google library. And so I clicked on it, and it was a book in the Google Books library website that had been scanned. It was published in 1916, written by an anthropologist named John Cooper. And in that book, the title of the book was about the indigenous tribes of Tierra del Fuego. And it was, I forget the exact name of the book. It's a long title, and you can look this up. But it's the indigenous tribes of Tierra del Fuego. And this guy, this anthropologist who was working for the Smithsonian Institute on a grant, had gone down there, done research, and published this book. And in the back of the book, I found the word Tejbar in a glossary of these, common words in the Fuegian language. This is the native language of the tribes of that area. And Cooper had translated these common words into phonetic English. And there was a word, Tejbar, spelled Tezjbar, that literally meant forehead, translated to the word forehead. So that was, for me, a second confirmation. So I put away my laptop. I continued my interview, and what ensued was this discussion about reincarnation that he explained to me. I said, so it sounds like you survived physical death. You went on to this place called the astral realm. And he said, yes, indeed, I did. And I said, well, is that what's going to happen to me when I die? And he said, no. He said, not necessarily. He says, what typically happens when someone dies is that they're reincarnated to continue their journey of spiritual evolution and in learning. So I said, so you're telling me that I was somebody before I was Mark Sims. I was alive before. And he says, yes, you were. And I said, well, who was I? And he said, you were a wolf. And this blew me away because I came out of my mother's womb howling like a wolf. I mean, it's crazy. My dad will attest to this. I used to crawl around and howl when I was an infant. And by the age of 4 or 5 years old, I had developed a repertoire, literally, I'm not kidding, of howls, of different howls. I even had this thing where the bobcat gets in a fight with a wolf. And I would entertain my friends with these sounds, mimicking animals, and especially the wolf. And the wolf has been kind of this thing throughout my life. My parents have gotten me wolf shirts. My mom, when she moved from Michigan to Arizona to Flagstaff, she got a job at Northern Arizona University to continue her professorship there from Oakland University in Michigan. When she got there, she bought this beautiful stone-carved wolf, an Indian sculpture of an Indian head wearing the wolf skin. And she mailed it back to me as a gift. And it was a beautiful piece of Native American art that had been hand-carved, and I kept that on my desk for years and years. So the wolf motif had been something very powerful throughout my life since I was a child, and to learn this was really remarkable. And so we began talking about this, about the nature of reincarnation and the purpose of it. And so that became kind of the focus of that first day of talking, or the first few hours at least of my interview of Tejbar. I was just fascinated with his story of reincarnation and how that worked, and he began explaining how this works and the purpose of it. So
I got to ask you, you've gone off like on a huge role here with this. I want to go back to where we were like 25 minutes ago with your family. How did you convince your wife, your family, your friends that this was true contact that you experienced and not something that was out of fantasy or insanity?
Well, my ex-wife, as a consequence of this, my wife, my first wife of 27 years, we separated and ended up getting a divorce because we were both atheists when we met, and that was one of the very important common things we had. And we raised our daughter as an atheist as well. And now, through this experience, I learned that that's not the truth, that there's another reality that's true. And I wanted to explore this. And my wife was so against this whole thing. I began, for instance, saying grace at the table. This was something that Tejbar explained to me when he was communing with me during this 13-day period. It was, in fact, the first meal that I had after he communed with me, that breakfast meal that we had on the morning of November 16th, 2012. I went down to the hotel restaurant to have breakfast, and I had not slept at all. I'd been up all that morning interviewing Tejbar. So I ordered my breakfast from the waitress, and when my breakfast came to me, the Tejbar, before I began eating, shared with me that there's this universal grace that is performed by all intelligent species in the universe. And this is something that they do as a show of, universal brotherhood and sisterhood. And it's a very simple form of saying grace. And so I'll describe it to everyone. I'm sure people must be interested in what happened, but you take your two hands, palms up, and put on either side of your plate of food. You close your eyes and you think of something that you're grateful for. It could be anything, doesn't matter. And then you sing a note, hue. So it's like this. As you express the gratitude for whatever that thought was that at that moment. And he encouraged me to do it 3 times and to have 3 gratitudes. So I did that when my food came. And I was so moved while I was doing that. And one of the things I was grateful for was, of course, meeting Tejbar and learning this form of universal grace that, according to him, is practiced throughout the universe in a show of universal brotherhood and sisterhood. And this connects us. This is a ritual, a very simple ritual that you do before you eat if you want. And I felt that connection for the first time, especially with the help of being in communion with an extraterrestrial. It was very moving to me. So when I went home and I did this, I told my wife before I had met a TET, I said, I learned something when I was in California that I really like. Do you mind if I do this? This was right after I got home. I got home for dinner when I flew back from San Diego to Detroit. I've never told this story on a show. In fact,
this is a good place. We got 2.5 minutes.
Okay, 2.5 minutes, so I'll finish. So you can imagine, I'm on my way back from the airport. I call my wife to let her know I'm on my way. She's making dinner. So when I arrive, dinner's on the table. And before I eat, I say, hey, I'd like to do this thing, because by then I'd been doing it for about 3 days at every meal. And so I did it in front of her. And, I'm doing it with my eyes closed, doing the 3 hues. And then I open my eyes and I look at her, and her jaw is on the table. I mean, she's just looking at me like I'm an ET, right? So that's the beginning of this transformation, this experience with my family upon my return from Borrego Springs in 2012. And you can imagine my wife immediately being alarmed in this behavior, that here I am, a devout atheist. It's the last thing she would ever imagine that I'd be doing when I returned from Borrego Springs, and I'm doing grace, and it's very clearly some form of grace. I just said, there's this thing that I learned, and I didn't even say it was grace. It's just to show gratitude is what I said. But it was very clear that it was a form of grace because I was into it. It really moved me, and I enjoyed doing it. So when she saw that emotion coming through and that deep feeling for what I was presenting, it shocked her.
Did you become vegan too?
I did for a while, but what's strange is that I had become vegan before that trip. I had begun experimenting with veganism about a year before, and Tejbar explained to me that it was because of my veganism that I could handle the communion experience, that and the fact that I was physically fit. And, I said, while I was still in California that first morning, I said, why me? And he said, well, the first answer was, when the student is ready, the master will appear.
Well, I can tell you this, Mark, as we get ready to go to commercial here, that my guides wanted me to go vegan too, and we had a major argument because I refused to give up bacon. Refused. Oh. It is a universal meal that can be shared at any time of the day, and we went at it, and I won. That's what I'll say. Mark Sims is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. We are talking about ET communication. What is it like to have your entire life transformed by extraterrestrials and ET contact? More in Hour 2 with Mark Sims, right after this on Spaced Out Radio. All right, Mark, we got 6 minutes. I'm going to quickly run my dogs outside. I'll be right back, okay?
Okay, sounds
So
great.
I'm just going to mute this. I'm going to mute your mic, and I'm just going to switch to an empty chair there, and I'll be right back. All right, I am back. I'll switch that there. Switch that there. All right, let's give a quick shout out to everyone who's come in already that we haven't said hello to so far. Terry Brown, good to see you. I know there were a couple more up here. Lynn, just an update so far. We're good, okay? And Ed Clater's here, everyone. Ed Clater. Let's see here. Who else has come in? I know there's a couple more that... I bet you my chat rooms move so fast that I'm going to miss them. So, if I haven't said your name... Oh, there's the amazing Carla. There she is. And the gorgeous Jessica McCreary has arrived. Yes, it's awesome. And I think we're good so far. I think we're all caught up. We got about 1 minute. 1 minute. It is so gross outside here right now, Mark. Literally, it is snowing forest fire ash. Yeah.
Well, I can really sympathize with. When I moved to California, I moved to Ojai, and in 2018,
the big one there.
Yeah, we had what's called the St. Thomas fire, and I was living in Ojai, and we almost lost our town. We were very lucky.
That was 2017 for me. I was evacuated for 15 days. So, all right, we're coming back in 15 seconds. A big thank you to Chad, Toe Tag, Lori, Nicole, Andrew, Jeremy, Bigfoot Rob, and 509er for the amazing super chats. It's a great way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis. Thank you to all the veterans tuning in as well. Here we go with the second hour.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Here we go with hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Really do appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Want to remind you that if you're tuned into our radio stations across North America or digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL, thank you so much for checking us on out tonight. We really do appreciate that. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club, Cryptogenic. Cryptogenic is your password. Use it wisely, space travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram, Spaced Out Radio Show. We continue on with the amazing story of ET contact with Mark Sims. This is a guy who literally lost it all and has built himself up better than ever, all because of ET contact. Mark, welcome back.
Thank you, Dave.
I want to ask you, in regards to your contact, the being that you saw, did he ever tell you where he was from? Did you ever go on a ride with him anywhere?
No, he didn't have a ship. He was a celestial being, which I came to understand was a energetic being, made of energy or light, from a realm he called the celestial realm. And so during our program here, I'm going to share with your viewers and with you the main theme and thing that I learned from this 13-day experience, and that was something he called the Universal Consciousness Development Chart. He explained to me how consciousness evolved from the moment of the Big Bang to get to planets and stars and ultimately advanced life like us. And it's a fascinating subject. It's really the key message of my experience with Tejbar that I want to bring to humanity. I want to explain this. And I've spent 9 years trying to understand it from a scientific, philosophical, and spiritual standpoint. And through this process, I have kind of reinvented myself as a experiencer coming out of the closet, and I the title that I've taken is spiritual scientist. I consider myself a spiritual scientist now. That's what I aspire to, at least. I don't know if I'm there yet, but I'm well on my way. I know I'm on my way.
That's actually a cool name, spiritual scientist. You know, how did you make your way into the community? Because quickly you have shot up. You've developed an impressive and very close friendship with Danny Sheehan, who has been in the news lately as he started representing Lou Elizondo and is very much involved in the whole disclosure aspect. How did you all of a sudden just get your name out there?
Well, in 2015, by that time, I had become pretty prominent on all the CE5 Facebook groups. Now, back in 2012, in November, there were no CE5 Facebook groups. At least I don't even think Greer had one. One of the people that was at this event was a guy named Peter Chan. And Pete and I were sitting next to each other on the first night. And when we did our first meditation as a group, Greer went around and asked if we had experienced anything. And during that meditation, I felt like somebody had touched my elbow. But I wasn't sure. It definitely felt like it. And then I kind of passed it off as maybe a muscle twitch. But you don't get a muscle twitch in your elbow. So Pete, the guy next to me who I just met from San Diego, says somebody touched me on my elbow. And, it's on the opposite side of him. It wasn't like, because I was wondering if his elbow hit my elbow, and it wasn't. He said, somebody touched my elbow. And there was a big gap between him and the next chair. I was sitting right next to him, and then when he said that, I knew I had also been touched. I said, somebody touched me too. And so Peter and I immediately bonded because we started talking, and we felt we had this thing in common. Although I was skeptical, I thought maybe somebody had snuck up behind me. I was still very skeptical and suspicious of Greer, frankly. And there might have been somebody else there who was secretly, going around doing something like that. But anyway, Pete had, after we went back home, he had also seen this ship that appeared on the 5th night of our 6-day retreat. And he was so moved and so changed by that experience, having seen his first ship, that he started the first CE5 group on Facebook. He called it San Diego CE5, or CE5 San Diego, I believe. And I joined that group, and then they started popping up. And every time a new CE5 group would pop up, I would join, and I would begin sharing my stories with them. And so through that, I met a man named Dr. Joseph Burks, who was a retired UCLA doctor, emergency room doctor, who had back in the 90s been a colleague of Greer's. He and Greer had become good friends and colleagues, and Joseph Burks had started a CE5 group in Los Angeles that had become very large and was probably the most prolific group out in the field doing work. And they had news cameras that they were bringing out and doing filming craft that was showing up during these CE5s. And so Joseph had reached out to me and to hear more about my story. And so we began a friendship over Facebook. And eventually that led to phone calls, private phone calls between us. And he began sharing more private information about his work with Greer. And that developed into a friendship. And ultimately he invited me to come and visit him for a week in Arcata, where he lives, Northern California on the coast. So I visited him, and we spent a week together. And while we were together, he mentioned Danny Sheehan, and I knew nothing of Danny Sheehan. And he said, really, you should meet this guy, and he should hear your story. So he initiated a connection with Costa Makris, who's another well-known CE5 practitioner and experiencer. And through Costa and Costa's wife Hollis, who had Danny Sheehan's number, they called and suggested to Danny that we meet. And unfortunately, Danny's very busy and hard to get a hold of, so we went through his secretary, and his secretary then watched a video that I had posted about my experience. I had a reunion of 1 year to the day from my initial contact with Tejbar, and I invited some of the people who I'd met the year before at the CE5 retreat, and some of my friends from California, and there were a couple of other friends from around the country who by that time had heard about my story. And I said, I'm doing this major coming out, I'm going to film myself giving a presentation, a formal presentation about this experience I had with Tejbar a year ago, and you're welcome to come. And I rented the ballroom of this hotel, the same hotel where Tejbar showed up in my hotel room. And people stayed in that hotel. We sold it out, and it's not a big hotel, but we sold out the hotel, and we had about 20 people who showed up. And I gave my presentation, and I hired a videographer who filmed it, and then I later posted that same video on YouTube. And so Danny Sheehan's secretary watched the video and was so moved by the video that she grabbed Danny. It's a funny story because they both told me the story that she said, Danny, you have to make time to watch this video. You have to. So he finally made time. He watched the video, and I ended up getting a call from his secretary saying, Danny wants to meet you. Can you fly out to California? Because I was in Michigan at the time, not in California where I'm at now. And so I agreed to fly out, and I met with him over a weekend. And I shared my story, and he shared with me that based on my account in that video that I had posted, he believed my story. There were certain things in that personal account I relayed that convinced him I was telling the truth about this communion experience, the whole 9 yards. And so he felt that if this story were true, and he did believe it was true, it was a unique and very important story that he wanted to know more about. He wanted to vet me. So we spent like 3 hours in his office, and he grilled me. I felt like a witness on the stand, but he's so friendly, and he's just got a way to, you let your guard down, and I love that about him. He's just
fantastic hair too. He's got fantastic hair.
Right. Oh, his hair. He's angelic. I mean,
yes.
I just feel like he's my father. He just has that fatherly, energy. And so I completely trusted him. I completely opened up about everything, including the fact that I had been involuntarily committed in the University of Michigan hospital for 20 days. And I was forced to take olanzapine and lithium to treat a bipolar disorder I was diagnosed with that I didn't believe I had.
Right.
So anyway, I told him the whole story about that, which was something that I had not told very many people about, and other things that had happened after my initial contact that were continuing to happen, because this relationship that began in 2012 with Tejbar eventually continued after I separated from my wife and I moved out of my house, got my own house, and literally the next night, my first night that I slept in my new house that I rented after separating from my wife, I had an experience in my new home, and then I began meditating on a regular basis, and through meditation I could communicate and continue this relationship that I had established back in 2012. And I continue to maintain and nurture that relationship to this day. And it's one of the most blessed things that ever happened in my life. I've been very fortunate to have this relationship.
Mark, I'd like to bring in audience questions here in hour two, and we'll start off with Michelle, who is asking, did the being talk to you about a or the creator?
Yes.
What was that like? What did he fill you in on?
Oh, it's well, there is a creator. I do not claim, and Tejbar explained as best he could to my human, mini mind, in a way that I could kind of understand as much as possible what that is, what that creator might be. And it's very esoteric, it's very cerebral, and it's not like, there's this guy, this anthropomorphic image of a god, with the beard and, all that. It's nothing like that. But he used various analogies. He said, Mark, think of yourself as a toe cell within the body of a being that is just humongous. And you're embedded deep in the body of God. And you look around and all you see is toe cells. So you assume that all there are other toe cells in this universe. But in fact, if you could project yourself outside of the body of God, but you can't because you're trapped within this body of God, this 3D universe, or 4D if you want to include time, you can't project outside of this dimension, so you're trapped. And so that's your worldview. That's, but if you could project outside, let's call it a higher dimension, you would realize just how diverse the body of God is, and that there's not just toe cells, but there are other cells, heart cells and liver cells and other cells that are providing a vital function in this body, but they're not toe cells. And they may be functioning at a level that's more significant, that's providing a more important function, relatively speaking. So there's a kind of hierarchy. So he says, when I ascended, this is Tejbar speaking, when I ascended to the astral realm, it was like me going from a toe cell to a heart cell. As a heart cell, I still have a concept of individual, identity as a sentient being. But a heart cell is only good when it works with other heart cells to provide the vital function to the body in which it's a part. And you coordinate. Heart cells work together and they coordinate to pump blood in the body. And then he went on to say, because he had a second ascension from the astral level to the celestial level. And what he's explaining to me is this 3 levels of what he called creation. There are 3 levels of creation: the physical, the astral, and the initial top level. We can think of it from a hierarchical standpoint as the celestial. That was the beginning of the Big Bang, is another analogy he gave. So he said that when he ascended from the astral to the celestial, he transformed from a heart cell in this analogy to a brain cell or a neuron or a synapse in the mind of God. He became part of the Godhead. That was literally the word he used. I became a member of the Godhead. And at that level of consciousness, I became aware of God realization. He says that each one of these levels, there are dimensions of awareness, of consciousness that are gained, that become primary. In the physical, the dimensions of consciousness that are primary are the 5 physical senses. And he said exactly this, that only physical beings have the 5 physical senses, because you have to have a physical body with the organs that can sense the environment, the eyes, the ears, the nose, etc., right? But a astral being that does not have a physical body cannot have a physical experience without manifesting a physical body, which they can do. But in the at the astral level of awareness, or no, that's not the right word, at this higher dimension of existence that's non-physical, they don't have a physical experience. And furthermore, there's the celestial level, and he said you lose, at each one of these levels, you lose more and more of your sense of identity, of the self, the ego. But you gain more of this God realization that you're a part of, that you're a part of God. It's more, he said, the dimensions of awareness gained at that level that are primary, you relate to things like omniscience, omnipresence. These are the words that he used. Where at the astral level, it's more like astral projection, remote viewing, were literally dimensions of awareness he mentioned. Telepathy is one of them. So telepathy, according to Tejbar, is a higher dimension of consciousness that we as physical beings can gain through practice, or we're born innately with that ability, he explained. There are people who are born with telepathic powers or capabilities, and that's typically a sign of an advanced soul or maybe a walk-in. For your viewers who may already be aware of that, these beings that are already astral, that have ascended and have chosen to manifest or to incarnate in the physical for some purpose, to be of service, to help the earth and humanity on our earth to transition at this critical time. They're here to, as part of a divine mission, to help us through this transition that we're about to go through, that we are beginning to go through.
All right, let's get to another question. This one comes from Jennifer. Why didn't you ask the ET what it wanted from you?
Well, I'm trying to think if I didn't ask that question. I don't recall asking that specific question. I was so riveted by, everything else I was learning. One of the questions I did ask is, why me? Why did you pick me? I felt kind of chosen. Here I am with 25 people or 24 other people, including Greer, at this event, and I assumed I was the only person, when he communed with me, that was picked and was given the opportunity to have this experience. And I said after a few hours, why me and not someone else? And I explained earlier, his immediate answer was, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And I'd never heard that term, and since I understand that now to be a famous quote of the Buddha. But he went on to tell me that it was because I was physically fit that I could handle this communion experience, because it is very intense. My heart was racing. I was like shaking. When that happened, it was very scary. And he explained that it could induce a heart attack to someone that isn't in, good physical health. And that eliminates, somebody from having an experience like that, because they could have a heart attack and they're disqualified. You can think of it that way.
It's familiar about that, and I hate to cut you off. When you mentioned the heart attack, when I saw the alien in the forest with Samantha Mowat, they started telepathically communicating with Samantha, and I was freaked out. I wasn't freaked out at seeing them. I was freaked out at how my life has changed at the flash of a moment. And the one ET that was communicating with Samantha said, "You're more than welcome to come over and say hello to us. We're not here to harm you. We're not here to take you. However, we're worried about the man's health." Now, it's only Samantha and I bet you they were worried about the heart attack. I guarantee it.
Right. Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons they're so reclusive and aloof, because they are concerned about, the fact that we could have an outcome, a health outcome that could result in death. And so they don't want us to, be hurt. At least if, there's this question, are there good ETs, are there bad ETs? I believe that, yes, indeed, there are probably both. I've been very fortunate in my experience to have a very intimate relationship with a benevolent extraterrestrial. And then there's the whole question, is it an extraterrestrial at all? Because he claims to have been from Earth. I believe he meets the criteria for an extraterrestrial, but he also was human. And all he was sharing with me is this evolutionary process that he went through to go from being human thousands of years ago to what he was when I met him and was communing with him, which was this celestial being. And he explained to me that this is the path that I'm on.
I'm gonna get you to leave it right there, Mark, because we do have to go to commercial break here at the bottom of the hour. What a beautiful story of ET contact that Mark Sims is sharing with us tonight. Absolutely amazing. We're going to continue with your questions from the audience and Mark's experiences with aliens on extraterrestrial time here on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going to show you guys something. So I live in a town called 100 Mile House, or just outside of it. And this here, we are 100 miles from Lytton, British Columbia, which is just coming out of the Fraser Canyon. So I'm going to show you what's happening there. And Lytton's a very small town. And let me bring it up here. This is what's happening in Lytton right now. This is from earlier today. I don't know if I can expand this or not. There we go. This is Highway 1. If you're heading out towards where I live. So this is about 100 miles from me, or 160 kilometers. This is the exit highway to get to Vancouver for me. Yeah. This is pretty surreal.
Yeah, it is surreal.
Yeah. Yeah, this sucks. I'm going to tell you that right now. This kind of sucks bad.
I was telling you about the fire back in 2018, and we had to flee Ojai, and it took about 2 weeks before we could return back to Ojai, and luckily our town was saved. We were surrounded on all sides, but just last August, my father was living up in Northern California in a place called Happy Camp. It's near the Oregon border. And a fire got started in the same way, I believe. It was a lightning strike. I'm not sure about that. It may have been something else. But anyway, he was woken up by a neighbor at 3 a.m, and the fire was coming down the mountain where he was living, and he barely got out with his life. He was living in an RV at the time on the property and building a house, and he had to flee. He got out just barely, and in the RV, and he fled north up into Oregon, where he wasn't able to return for almost a month. And when he came back, his entire property had been burnt. He lost everything. He lost 2 vehicles, all of his supplies, and then so he had to move here. He moved in with me, and now he lives just less than a mile away from me. I've got a place for him where he's staying, and I just bought a house. I put an offer in for a house a few days ago, and he's going to be just living a few blocks from me. So I'm really excited to have him living with me. But I got a call from him later that morning, and he was in tears because he was so emotional about the fact that he had escaped with his life. He knew he told me, he says, "Mark, I should be dead." He was driving through the fire in the RV. He said he was surrounded. The heat was coming into the RV. He thought he was going to die.
Yeah. I know that feeling. It's terrible. It's not fun. All right, we have about a minute and a half here.
All right.
The studio is fine, everyone. The closest fire to me is about 25 minutes south. Probably after the show have to go help my boss. So, kind of go from there. But that's okay. We'll make it. No, I have not built a Taco Bell near me yet. Kev, sorry. I'd love to. But yeah. All right, we got about 40 seconds. I want to say a big thank you to Ed Clater, to Chad, to Toe Tag, to Lori, Nicole, Andrew, Jeremy, Bigfoot Rob, and 509er for the amazing super chats tonight. Really do appreciate the love you have for this show on a nightly basis. Thank you for all of our veterans who are listening to this show and all of our regulars in the chat room. We love you. And to our new subscribers, thanks for hitting the subscribe button. Ring that bell because we are here 7 days a week. I'm Monday through Friday, Lynn Wallington on Saturdays, Michael W. Hall on Sundays, and we always bring the woo. Here we go, everyone. Here we go with the second half of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Really do appreciate it. Want to remind you that if you've missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have the plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. We continue on with the great story of Mark Sims. E.T. contact changed his entire life, his entire paradigm, and his entire spirituality. And now he continues to preach the message of what the extraterrestrial phenomena wants to get out to humankind. Mark, welcome back.
Thank you, Dave. It's great to be here. I'm enjoying this.
Awesome. We are too. Let's start off with a question from Cedric in our chat room. Mark, did ET experiences come from within or outside of self?
Well, both. The whole experience began with the sighting of that craft that materialized above our group in 2012. And then later, of course, I shared the story about the ET appearing at the end of my bed. So that was outside of myself, that, initial experience and awareness that ETs are real. That was my awakening to the reality of extraterrestrial existence and the fact that they're here. Then, of course, when the ET merged with me, this being called Tejbar, it became very much an internal experience. And that experience primarily began as a telepathic dialogue. I would ask a question, I would get an answer. But within a half hour or so in this interview of Tejbar, as I was asking more and more questions, and these questions were becoming more sophisticated and required more information to completely answer my question, I began getting what I called downloads. And these downloads were very much like suddenly being given the answer, but the answer is very involved. And initially, the best analogy I can give to these downloads when I first began getting them was I was given the answer as a plate of food, and the food is an analogy for information, for the answer to my question. And it was it's voluminous, and I had to integrate it. So it was like taking a spoonful and eating it one bite at a time. And each time I took a bite and I would integrate that information into my brain, I would take another bite. And I would get these affirmations from Tejbar that what I was integrating and learning was true. And there were occasions early on in this process where I made mistakes. I would sometimes I'd say, is this true? Is this what you're telling me? And he'd say no, and he'd make me eat that bite over again. And or he'd retell it. He'd give me a little micro download that would clarify that part of the download. And then I'd continue. And then by 2 or 3 days into this experience, I would get downloads and I could integrate them very rapidly, instantaneously, I would say. But the other mode of learning during this 13 days of being in communion with Tejbar was, I'll call it being taken out of my body, because it wasn't like a traditional astral projection or out of body experience where all of a sudden I'm above my body looking down and my physical body is in the bed or something. I would just suddenly find myself in somebody else's shoes, literally. I remember the first time this happened was within the first half hour of my communion with Tejbar. I'm asking Tejbar about reincarnation. And so in an answer to one of my questions about reincarnation, I suddenly find myself in the shoes. And I should qualify this. This is really an important detail, so I'm going to correct myself. It wasn't just about reincarnation. We were talking about that topic at the time, but we were also talking about Christianity. I had become a real cynic of the Christian institution throughout my adult life. I felt that Christianity and most of the major religions were simply a way for men in positions of authority to control large groups of people through the dogma of sin and guilt. And so when I was learning through my interview with Tejbar that indeed there appears to be the afterlife, and we do ascend to this place that one would call heaven if you were a Christian, I was like, okay, so there is this place called heaven, but what happened to the Christian institution? Because from my perspective, all I see is corruption, and the Catholic Church with, the whole pedophile, thing and everything. And so suddenly it was then I said, this question was, so what happened to the Christian institution? And as soon as I asked that question, this is what triggered this out-of-body experience. And I literally suddenly found myself standing in somebody else's shoes, and I'm in an arena. And I'm looking around, and there are all these people in the stands. Now, it's circa 1st century, okay? And I know this because of the way people are dressed, and this gate opens in the arena, and these men pull in a cage on wheels, and in the cage is a lion. And these men, after bringing the cage with the lion inside, they leave. And there's a man on top of the cage who opens the gate. Now, as this is happening, as I'm witnessing this in this other person's shoes, I'm looking around, or I'm not looking around. I'm just focused on the lion. I'm like laser eyes on the lion. I'm aware of what's about to happen to me. I'm totally aware of the situation I'm in, what's about to happen to me, and who these people are witnessing what's about to happen to me. And what I'll tell you, I'll explain that. I had been a evangelist. I had this man that I was in the shoes of, okay? And I didn't know at the time this was a previous life. I didn't learn this until 3 years later. So I find myself in the shoes, and I'm aware that this man is a holy man. He's a Christian who is going around the Middle East and Northern Africa preaching the teachings of Jesus Christ. And he's been accused of blasphemy against the Roman emperor, and he had been warned to stop it, but he had refused. And he had become a political force because he had a large following, And finally, this caught up to him. He had been protesting outside of this very arena against the terrible practices of the Romans, this business practice of, gladiator and other blood sport, bringing these beautiful creatures out of Africa and having them fight to the death for entertainment and for money. And this had become a big business. And so I felt it was an affront against God, which indeed it was. And I was preaching, the teachings of Jesus, that there was one God. And back then it was primarily a pagan belief system, or, you believed in the Roman emperor. And in fact, it was, you were forced as a citizen of the Roman Empire to believe and state that, the Roman emperor was your God. He was a God in the flesh. And so I was this man had been whisked off, tried, and taken back to the very place he had been protesting with large groups of people. And I was standing there in his shoes waiting for I knew I was going to be put to death. I didn't know how. So when this cage came in with the lion, I knew that the lion was going to be released and kill me. But this man that I was in the shoes of knew this, and he realized that he was going to die. He was not afraid at all, and he knew that he needed to show courage to the people that were witnessing this. Many of these were people that supported him and were his followers. And so when the lion was released and it came towards him, it hit this man. And I saw this through his eyes. And when the lion hit him, I felt the hit of the lion and went down. And then I just let the lion, or this man just let the lion go for the death grip on the back of his neck, my neck, because I felt this as if it was me. And I felt the fangs go into the back of my neck. And then I felt my vertebrae begin to pop. And when I felt a soft pop and then a really loud pop, as if my own neck was breaking in the hotel room. And I started freaking out and screaming. I started screaming, "Tejbar, stop it, stop it." And I immediately came out of this experience. And I was shaking like a leaf. My heart was racing. And I just sat there, integrating this experience, this traumatic experience I've been through. And what I felt I was learning through that was that this man that I was in the shoes of, I knew was a very good man. I had been, like I said, I was a cynic of any religious leader. I mean, I knew there were good men and women in positions of authority within the church. Don't get me wrong. But I felt, the highest levels, these were corrupt people. And I was very cynical about it. And here I was in the shoes of a man who was probably one of the most, true believers in Jesus Christ,
right,
and committed his life to the teachings of Christ at the risk of his physical safety, and continued to do this calling he felt called to. And he had this amazing relationship with God. And I learned this all through these few minutes in this experience, that this man had prayed and was meditating, and through his meditative practice, he was having these visceral experiences that he interpreted as God, and they were light shows, like the one I'd had that, that led up to Tejbar ending up at the end of my bed. And what I also learned in that was this man was so committed. He was a good man. He was really trying to help save the souls, so to speak, because he felt this was undermining the spiritual evolution of the people, that they were, they were going down a bad path. So anyway, that was my experience. And so I felt, in answer to the question that was just posed, that was an out-of-body experience, but it wasn't the kind that you typically hear about, where this energetic or astral body leaves the physical body and you can see it. I didn't experience that, but I definitely was not in my body. I was in somebody else's body, and then I started screaming, and suddenly I was back right in my body in the hotel room.
Wow. How do you control your emotions after something like that?
Oh, it was very moving. I was weeping after that. That was really, it's still, I've told this story enough now that I can hold back the tears. It still draws a very deep emotional response anytime I relay this story because it's still vivid. And now the fact that I know who that person was, and that this was a previous life of mine.
I want to ask you, and I apologize for cutting you off, but a good friend of yours and mine, Nicole Sackage, believes that you are the one who is going to take the efforts of John Mack and kind of take it to that next level where John Mack left off. Do you see yourself filling those shoes, taking this ET contact to the next level and bringing it to the public?
Well, let me qualify this way, that when I met Danny, and this was in May of 2015, I flew from Michigan to San Jose, and Christy, his secretary, picked me up and drove me to Santa Cruz, where Danny was living and the Romero Institute is based. She took me to the hotel room, and I went to sleep and got up early that morning to do my early morning meditative practice, which I was doing daily at that time. And during that meditation, Tejbar said to me, "Look up St. Mark." So I looked up St. Mark, and I was blown away to learn that the nickname given to St. Mark is Mark the Lionhearted. And that when I did the research that morning, which I did before meeting Danny later that day, the story goes that St. Mark was killed by pagans. He founded the very first Coptic Christian church in Alexandria, Africa, in the city of Alexandria. And which still stands. I've been there. And the story goes that he was killed by the pagans because St. Mark was discouraging the pagans from worshiping the pagan gods. He said there was one God, the God of Jesus Christ, and he was winning converts over to Christianity, and so they eventually threatened him and then took him and put a noose around his neck and dragged him through the streets of Alexandria. And when this happened, his head popped off. And this is in the historic record that his head popped off. Now, what I believe after doing lengthy research on this and going to Alexandria and talking to one of the priests that works at the church there, that was founded by St. Mark. It's the oldest church and the first church in a Christian church in the continent of Africa. That the Romans, they wanted, one of the reasons they weren't rushing to kill St. Mark, to execute him, is because this was after the crucifixion of Jesus. And you know how that went. Not good things happened after he was killed. And they were worried that many members of the Roman, authorities that were ordered to kill me were worried about the consequences of executing somebody who had become so popular and had such a big following and who was an evangelist of Christ. And so they wanted to blame somebody else. And so what I believe really happened is that I was tried by the Romans. I was executed in the arena, and they called off the lion, and they gave my body to the pagans to then blame for my death. And they were dragging me around the streets of Alexandria, and my head popped off because the flesh of my neck was torn and my neck was broken. And I went down into the basement of the Coptic church there, and the skull is in a glass case. I got special permission to see it. And they wouldn't let me take a picture of it, but I saw the skull, and there's a crown on his head. There's a small beaded crown on his head, the original crown he wore. And and that year of 68 AD, when he was executed, there were 3 Roman emperors in one year. So Nero he went mad and was killed by a rival, who was then killed by another rival. That was the year of 3 pope or 3 emperors. You can look this up, and I believe that it was the punishment for the death of Saint Mark, that God was punishing those emperors. And it was right after his death. There's the feast of Saint Mark in believe in April, and Nero died just a month later. And he was going crazy. The record is he was going crazy, and that made him vulnerable to a rival. Forget the guy's name, but he was then killed by his rival, who became the new emperor, and he only lasted a few months. He was killed by another rival, and that guy didn't last long either. So I believe this is the true history of Saint Mark, and the what happened to him. And the other legend of Saint Mark that you'll find in the books is that there were 2 stories of his death. One, that he was dragged around the streets of Alexandria and killed by the pagans. They dragged him while he was still alive, and he eventually, his head popped off and he died. But the other account is that he was indeed tried by the Romans, and they set the lions loose on him in the arena, and they laid at his feet. They refused to kill him. And that's how he earned the nickname Mark the Lion-Hearted. And if you know, there's St. Mark's Basilica in Venice. And you're hearing this here first. I have not even told my family this. The other life that I was Marco Polo. So this is one of the other previous lives that I learned that I was. And Marco Polo was made famous by having traveled the Silk Road and going up to, into Asia and meeting Kublai Khan, who was the emperor of the Yuan dynasty in the mid-13th century, and they became friends. But Marco Polo was from Venice, and the St. Mark's Basilica is in Venice, and it was built not long after Marco Polo's life. And I'll stop there. This is good. I'm kind of getting off onto a tangent, not something I anticipated.
It happens. That's what we just allow it to happen here. That's what we do.
But this is my story, and it's pretty crazy, and I'll be the first to admit it. But it is my experience, and I do believe this, and that my contact experience and the question about John Mack. So to Nicole's question, I've gone off on a tangent, so let's bring it back. John Mack was a great man. And Danny and he became good friends after Danny saved his job at Harvard. He was the head of the clinical psychology department at Harvard, and he almost lost his tenureship. And because of Danny and 18 months of Danny's hard work, he saved his job. And they became fast friends through that experience. And in the ensuing years from, I think it was around 94, 95, up until John's death in 2006, they had together come up with this concept of founding an organization called the New Paradigm Institute. And John was about to secure a building on Harvard's campus that was going to be the new headquarters. And Danny was living in Washington, D.C. at this time. And they were going to launch the New Paradigm Institute together there, and that was going to be, John was going to be the executive director, and that was going to be his new job. He was going to quit his professorship and start that work. But he was tragically killed in 2006 in London when he was there visiting, And it was a total accident. He was crossing the road at a point where he shouldn't have been crossing, and he was looking the wrong way because the roads are, opposite than they are here in the States. So he's looking the wrong direction, stepped out into traffic thinking it was clear, and he was hit by a car, and he then died.
Mark, I'm going to get you to hold on right there because we are going to go to break here at the top of the hour. 2 hours down, 1 hour to go. We have Mark Sims for another 30 minutes, and we're going to change the paradigm a little bit because he's very involved with what's going on with disclosure right now, and I want to find out. We'll be back. Spaced Out Radio. God, I could listen to you for hours. Hours! I'll be right back, my man.
All right.
I'm just going to put your microphone on mute, and I'll be right back. Sorry about that, guys. I was just quickly chatting with my boss. So, that's that. Okay, we're good. Hey, Grand Master, how are you? Good to see you. Noble Patrick, welcome. Yes, Gene, I have a daytime job as well. Want to say a big thank you to Vinny, to Marty, Ed, Chad, Toe Tag, Lori, Nicole, Andrew, Jeremy, Bigfoot Rob, and 509er for the amazing super chats. We're going to get going here in about 10 seconds. Thank you to all the veterans listening to our show and our brand new subscribers, along with our regulars. We appreciate each and every one of you. Let's have fun as we go to hour 3 now.
Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Want to say hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Cryptogenic. Cryptogenic is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam set the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. For the final time tonight, we bring in Mark Sims, an amazing story of ET contact, how it changed his life from being a scholar to now a person who is searching for the unknown, the ET contact, ready to come to Earth. Mark, welcome back.
Thank you, Dave. It's great to be here. I'm really enjoying myself, and you're a great host, and
thank you.
I'm really enjoying it.
Mark, I want to ask you, and we're going to go in a little bit of a different direction here, if you don't mind, but you have a foot in the door with what is happening with everything due to disclosure right now. You're working very close with lawyer Daniel Sheehan, who is representing Luis Elizondo, and everything that is going on. Very curious to hear your opinion of what is happening with the state of ufology and UFOs with the American government right now.
Well, I believe that the government has done the world a great favor by acknowledging that these are not their own vehicles, and it's of course absurd that anybody would think that they're Russian or Chinese. And Lou Elizondo himself has said that, you know, for these vehicles to be a foreign adversary would be the biggest collapse of national security intelligence in the history of the world. It's unheard of. I mean, these vehicles were around in the 40s and 50s, back when China was still, you know, doing ox and you know, pulling the plow with the ox. It's just there's no way that this is Russian or Chinese. And so I think the government has done what they had to do, and that they've done what they've gone only as far as they can. I don't expect them to go much further. That's my guess. My best guess is that they're not going to come out and tell everyone it's ETs. They can't, because the ramifications of that, the outcome of that, is so difficult to determine. It could result in people going mad, people taking their own lives, and I'm sure that was something that was taken into consideration decades ago when the government first learned about the reality of the ETs, and so I think that by just merely acknowledging that they exist and to share videos of these advanced performance characteristics that seem to defy the laws of physics, or at least the capabilities of our most advanced technology, it opens the door to this discussion and takes away the skepticism and the chuckle factor, even though you have some people who make fun of it in media today. I'm really kind of disappointed in some of the prominent people in the news and in science that seem to still chuckle about this possibly being UFOs and ET intelligent controlled craft. It's just so obvious that they're here now. And so, in anticipation of this, kind of going back to the question Nicole brought up about, John Mack, Dr. Mack, when he was alive, he and Danny felt it was crucial to establish an institute for the purpose of asking the world leaders, and especially the leaders within our religious institutions, our major religious institutions, what would it mean to the philosophical and theologically, what would it mean? How would these leaders respond and prepare themselves and their followers with the reality that we're not alone, and that not only is there life elsewhere in the universe, which completely changes the traditional view of creation and us being at the pinnacle of God's creation, but the fact that they're here, that they're already here, and they appear to have been here a very long time, as we're learning through programs like Ancient Aliens and other programs that are shedding light on artifacts that are being carbon dated to be tens of thousands of years old. So there's an important and urgent need to help our religious leaders prepare for this inevitability, so that they have good answers to questions that naturally are going to be asked by their followers, because they're going to go through an identity crisis of sorts, especially those that are really stuck or have rigid beliefs about us being the only creation in the universe, and that beyond that we're at the pinnacle of evolutionary progress. And this is a very humbling thing to realize, that not only are we not at the pinnacle, but that there seemingly are these very intelligent, technically advanced beings that have been here a long time, and they could do whatever they want relative to us. If they wanted to take over, they could easily take over, and it's a good sign they haven't already. It to me points to a likely reality that they in fact are benevolent and are just simply watching over us for some purpose, which is what I've come to understand through my own teachings through Tejbar.
All right. With the way the media has covered this subject, one of the things I'm disappointed in is not a single reporter has asked anybody or any government official, Mark, as to why they refuse to talk about anything in the past, say since Roswell on up to 2004. They've started this report from 2004 straight to 2021. And I'm just baffled by this because, yes, the people who are just getting into this subject are learning a new drop date for UFOs, which was the Nimitz incident, but there's a lot of history going on here that doesn't make sense. In talks with Daniel Sheehan or other people that you have communicated with, what is the feeling going around the world of UFOs regarding this misinformation about UFOs really coming into the forefront at 2004?
Well, you're right about that there really is no major outlet that is talking about previous to 2004. It's my personal belief that that's all contrived and part of a disclosure plan to help the government explain away or having to explain themselves for lying to us for so long. And, it's for those like you and I who have done the research, we're well aware of projects by the government, specifically the CIA, to create disinformation that led to the discrediting of very credible people and to make fun of this, to ultimately make it so that people wouldn't talk about it at all, be discouraged from being taken seriously. People's careers were ended because they were talking about extraterrestrials and back in the 70s and 80s. And, John Mack is a case in point of this, that here's a very credible person who had a track record of success and intelligence, and he almost lost his job, and if it weren't for Danny, they would have. But the government's really in a pickle from the sense that they behaved badly, and they don't want to have to explain themselves. So if they can just, start the history of this phenomenon from 2004 forward, then they don't have to go back and apologize for that bad behavior. So I think that's part of the plan, that they just hope that that doesn't come up. And if we can just keep people's attention on current events without bringing up that ugly history and having to explain why the American people, and in fact the whole world, were lied to by the Air Force and other, government agencies, that will make their lives a lot easier. I myself am one to believe that the government really was between a rock and a hard place. They couldn't disclose because they really felt that the American public and really the world was not prepared. And I agree with that analysis. I think if I had been president or somebody in authority within the Pentagon, I would have very likely putting myself in that time frame with the level of consciousness in the planet and the prevailing thinking within those institutions, it would have been premature and very risky. And so they had to come up with a way to squelch the discussions about this being anything but a real phenomenon. So I give them a pass, so to speak, on that. I don't think they handled it ideally, but that's the nature of these things. And I also think that very likely there were very few agencies that really understood the full scope of what was going on. I don't think because they were afraid as well, they weren't open to dialogue and trying to establish communications and really understanding who and what the ETs were. And there may have been some difficulty in communication with that fear as a key element in those early relationships between ETs and anybody in the know with authority, like Eisenhower or Truman and the early members of the CIA, heading the CIA. So and then you've got the question of the Nazis and whether they discovered, anti-gravitic propulsion, and it was a hairball, a real confusing mess that nobody could really wrap their heads around, and so I think maybe they still don't know the full story. And based on my own experience, which I think is a unique experience, I don't know of anybody in the UFOlogy record who's had 13 days, waking days, interviewing an extraterrestrial. And what I learned, I feel I have a responsibility to share with the world, and I've been preparing myself for that. And Tejbar has been preparing me for that. So I've had to study things. You know, he gave me homework assignments, things to study like numerology and sacred geometry and superstring theory and other quantum mechanics. I didn't know very much about quantum theory. You know, I knew the cursory, superficial things about the theory, but now I consider myself as not an expert, but you know, somebody who's well versed in the theories and the implications of quantum mechanics and quantum theory and how it impacts the manifestation of physical reality, how the observer has an impact. And that really is significant in this.
Mark, what's the danger of announcing whether or not extraterrestrials are here? Okay, in my opinion, this is something that's going to affect every religion, every religious person. It's going to affect the markets. I'm scared about that. There's a lot of paranoid people running around this planet right now. Right. How do you think this is going to affect the public?
A lot of people are going to be in shock, especially those with a very strong identity and underpinning of religious beliefs. You know, if they have a strong religious identity, this is going to force them to recalibrate their worldview and their view of their religious tenets and beliefs. And that's difficult, you know, and you know, there's the ego is something in psychology that comes out of Freudian, research. You know, he came up with this thing called the psychic apparatus model, and it's a trilogy of the id, the ego, and the superego. And the ego is that thing that we know best from his research, and it's that part of us that allows that is our identity. And our identity is built on a foundation of years of beliefs that we're told by others and experiences that we have ourselves, and that creates our worldview. And when that underpinning, that foundation on which we base our self-identity is shattered, it's disorienting, and that disorientation can really lead to bad consequences and outcomes for people who are not adequately prepared. Now, looking back on the last, 20, 30 years, I think we've come a tremendously long way. Science has begun, we've discovered exoplanets, and that's led to the natural follow-on questions. Well, are there life on those planets now that we know that, the planets are prolific throughout the universe? Now there's very likely to be life, and that helps us prepare for the fact that there's life elsewhere. And the Drake equation, that's so now well known among scientific communities and now in popular culture. It's, but the question is, well, if the Drake equation implies that life should be everywhere in the universe, or the universe should be teeming with life, why aren't we getting signals when we look and listen for existence of radio emanations from these other star systems, and we're not seeing anything? Well, this is old thinking. Of course, you're not going to be using radio technology when there may be other ways to communicate that are much more effective and secure. I mean, to broadcast on radio waves is ridiculous because you're broadcasting your location in a potentially hostile environment. And so you're setting yourself up to be a victim of a predatory culture that, and there may very well be predatory cultures that would like to take over a world that's been populated by an intelligent species that's built infrastructure and has valuable resources like Earth. And so So I think advanced civilizations have learned more efficient ways of communication with light and consciousness that is instantaneous and possibly beyond the speed of light, and are secure in nature. Imagine a laser beam. If I want to talk to another civilization and I want to talk securely, I'm going to focus a laser beam at that destination and talk in such a way that nobody else can listen. And I'll do it with light, as opposed to radio waves. I'll use lasers.
Do you think, though, that this narrative that is being played out right now by the government, who is using the media, who is very naive to this subject, is healthy to move the UFO world forward?
I think that they're not interested in moving the UFO world forward. I don't think they're worried about those of us that have been studying this, who've been in the know, that have been experiencers. They're worried about the masses, those that are just learning this for the first time. Because this has been a subject of ridicule for so long, people have dismissed it as nothing serious to study. And most people are unaware of the rich history and the volumes of data and testimony of witnesses from the 40s, 50s, and 60s and beyond. We're just learning about the Navy videos from 2004 and 2014 and 19, and the witnesses on 60 Minutes that just came out in May. So this is, for most people, a brand new topic. And I know because I'm talking to my family who really thought I was crazy back in 2012, and now I'm starting to get people saying, "Hey, Mark, what do you think about these Navy videos?" And I'm saying, "Well, yeah, it's real, all right, and you should read some books. Here's some really great books if you're really truly interested in this phenomenon and the history of it. You should read the books from the 40s and 50s and 60s, because that was before all this disinformation and the kind of clamp down and the ridicule factor set in. And there's a lot of data, really good information there, messages from ETs for humanity that were given to individuals to share. And so we have that to draw upon to learn more about who these beings possibly are and what their motivations may be for being here. And the key messages that are played over and over again that create themes are: take care of your planet, don't use nuclear weapons, get rid of them. They're dangerous to you and to your environment. You're becoming an existential threat to yourselves. So that's in the historic record, and that's a message from a benevolent ET civilization. These are messages that have been not just once, twice, or three times, but over and over again. This new movie coming out, The Aerial Phenomenon by Randall Nickerson, that's coming out soon. And it tells the story of the Zimbabwe school, the aerial school, where these children were visited by two extraterrestrials that came down and landed in a UFO. And while the adult teachers were in the school having a meeting, these ETs communicated with the children in the schoolyard.
Right.
And what they were told was, basically, your planet is in danger. You're not taking care of your planet. And I believe these were seeds and messages implanted in these children to be told now as a forebearer of what we're experiencing, that to prove to humanity that they are benevolent, that they've always had our best interest in mind.
My friend, we got 15 seconds left. What a pleasure to have you on the show. Quickly, in 10 seconds, tell everybody where they can find your information.
MarkSims.com is my website. And, yeah, just stay tuned. Look there. There will be some new stuff, and I'm publishing a book this year called Tejbar, Making Contact with a Celestial Being. So look for.
Thank you, my friend. Mark Sims, everybody. What a great night of ET Contact. Coming up next, we have the SOR News Wire. We have the Thought of the Day. Stay tuned. Spaced Out Radio continues right after this. All right, we're clear.
All right. Well,
that was fun, man.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Thank you. Thank you for hosting me and letting me share my story.
Of course.
And this is the first time I've ever mentioned the whole, thing about Saint Mark on the air, and especially Marco Polo.
Right.
It's my story is so mind blowing to myself, but
I know
through the years of meditating and continuing my relationship and communications with Tejbar, the amnesia has been lifted in these previous lifetimes gradually, and I've been discovering them. And it's all making sense to me. And then I'm following that up with research on these historic figures. So, I can tell you I was Saint Mark and I was Marco Polo.
Right.
And it's fascinating to me that you have in Venice the St. Mark Basilica, and that he's the saint of Venice.
Right.
And there's a big Marco Polo Plaza, is right there. And I can, I know the real story of how the connection between St. Mark and Marco Polo that nobody knows. Nobody knows, but I know it. And eventually I'm going to tell that story in another book because it's fascinating. It involves a tribe in Montenegro that was doing business, shipping business with the Venetians, helping them move booty, gold, and
yes,
in the 14th and 15th century. And it was all Marco Polo. And then I was reincarnated as a leader of this tribe in Montenegro. It's fascinating.
Awesome. My friend, really appreciate you. Lynn, you can go to bed if you want. We'll make it. I promise you. Hi, Lynn.
All right. Sounds good.
We love you, Lynn.
Love you guys, too. Have a good night, everyone.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Have a good night, Lynn.
Night, Mark. Thank you so much.
Okay.
You bet.
Mark, we'll let you go as well, and thank you so much for your time, my friend. You did awesome.
Yes. Thank you very much, and God bless you. I hope everything, the fires get under control quickly, and your boss.
Hopefully. All right, my friend. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Yes. Our good friend Mark Sims. What a great guy. Lynn Wallington, everyone. There she is again. Woo! Lynn Wallington! She's off to bed. She sleeps there. She does. You got to unmute your mic there, Lynn.
That's how tired I am. I'm just going to lay back and go to sleep. I'm on like 2 hours of sleep.
Well,
I
go to
came in
bed.
from Ohio this morning.
What the Sam hell are you doing awake right now?
Oh, I was here for you, Dave.
I know, and I love you for it. Guess what? You get to be here for me tomorrow, too.
Awesome. Everybody's going to get so sick of me.
Well, apparently...
Hi, everybody.
Hi, it's Lynn Wallington, everybody. if you want to get a wrestling name, it's Lynn fucking Wallington.
Yes.
I like Mark Sims. Nice guy.
Yeah, he seems really nice.
Uh-huh.
It's a little in the,
Oh, it's super woo.
Woo for me.
It is beautifully super woo.
It is super woo, yes. That's Mark's wrestling name.
Yes.
Super woo. I love it.
Yeah, super woo.
Seems like a nice guy, though. I love you too, Kira.
Yes. See, you're starting to grow quite a following here, you know.
Oh, well,
they're
awesome. They're awesome.
And we should
What's
note that to the public and our audience that you will be filling in for Michael W. Hall on Sunday, July 4th. While Michael is out partying for the 4th of July, You are going to be in the hot seat, hanging on out, and I don't even know who your guest is that night.
Science Bob!
Science Bob! Wow!
I get to nerd out. I'm so excited.
There.
Everybody gets to see that side of me.
Look at that. Kira loves me, too. Yeah.
Oh, Kira's so sweet.
There was a day when Kira used to say, "Love you, Dave," before anybody else, and now I'm second to you. I am second to you.
No, never.
No.
You're her original love.
Oh.
Aw.
Dude, it sucks out there right now. It really
sounds
sucks.
like, or it looks like it. It's scary. That's crazy.
Yeah.
The SOR. Oh, Paul, I'll go check it out.
I'll let you go because I know I got to do the show here in like 10 seconds.
All right. Good night, everyone. Good night, Dave. Stay safe.
All right. Good night, hun, and you're the best. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Love me some Lynn Wallington, everyone. Here we go. Rounded third. We're heading for home tonight on Spaced Out Radio. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Really do appreciate earning your listening ears. Want to remind you that if you've missed most of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter @SpacedOutRadio and on Instagram, Spaced Out Radio Show. Speaking of the news... The news is always changing, which is why we bring you the SOR Newswire at the back end of every show, where we get to the weird, the strange, the wacky, and sometimes the horrific. Now, I'm not going to start off with a news story here, but as many of you know, we've been setting record temperatures here in British Columbia over the last few days, and just 2 days ago, a little town about an hour away from me called Lytton, British Columbia. It's in the Fraser Canyon. It hit 49.5 degrees or 49.6 degrees Celsius or 121 degrees Fahrenheit to be one of the hottest temperatures ever recorded in Canada. And today we got hit with a bunch of forest fires. Lightning and thunder came rolling through, and it has set off a bunch of forest fires. Now, back in 2017, we had to evacuate SOR headquarters for about 15 days, and we were able to try and get some live shows in at that time, and we were successful, but I don't know what's going to happen this year. That town of Lytton, by the way, I played a video of the fire that was happening earlier today that was recorded from Highway 1, and it's just come down with a report, a little bit of breaking news, that the entire town of Lytton has been wiped out due to fire. It's gone. Gone. Like, I drive down, when I go see my parents, or I go to a concert, or I go to Vancouver, you have to drive through Lytton. It is now gone. And let's just hope that everybody got out. It's a small town. It's where the Fraser River meets the Thompson River. And it is gone. Yeah. That's pretty heavy. So the closest forest fire to me right now is about 25 minutes south. And for people who don't know, I actually have a daytime job as well, besides moonlighting at night. Now you know, like, I have no life, because literally I work all day, I work all night, but there's just one thing that money can't buy. You know, the old Kiss song. And anyways, my boss, my daytime boss, he is on evacuation alert. He lives, so I live in the north part and he lives in the southeast. He is on evacuation, so I've been waiting for a phone call. I've been in communication. So if any of you on the YouTube side have been seeing me kind of looking at my phone, it's because I have been texting with my boss and just making sure that everything is A-OK, and if he needed a hand, that we were going to do that. He's told me he's signing off for the night. He's got everything good, and I will communicate with him in the morning and hope that a phone call in the middle of the night does not come, so that way I have to rush out there and help him because his family is on vacation right now, and he's home all alone with the dogs. Yes, so I just want to let you guys know that if SOR headquarters does get evacuated because of the forest fire situation here in central British Columbia, we will continue to broadcast. Lynn Wallington will step in, and she will take my spot during the YouTube shows, and I will let all of our radio stations know what is going on, and I will keep in touch with all of you listening in Radio Land to try and make sure that we can get everything going at the same time and make sure that we have a darn good show going on. So I will make sure that there is broadcasting happening if that happens, if we get evacuated. And I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that it doesn't happen again like 2017, but I got to tell you, it's ugly right now. It is literally, I go outside, it's hard to breathe outside. It is snowing ash. I don't know how else to put it. There's falling ash from the forest fires all over our towns. Everything is turning brown and yellow, and it is dry out, and it is not a good situation right now for anything in central British Columbia. So, power of prayer, power of positivity. What I would love to do is have every Spaced Out Radio listener out there literally put out the intentions and the prayers that there is rain coming for British Columbia. We need rain. It's just like California, and we're in that situation here again. And there's a lot of trees and a lot of dry timber out there that dries out really quickly at 40 degrees Celsius or 120 degrees Fahrenheit. All right, so let's put out that intention for some rain because we need it here on the West Coast. I don't want to start a big climate change argument or anything like that. This is about people right now. This is about people who have lost their homes. This is about people who have lost potentially their pets, their livelihoods, their jobs, their businesses. All right, and it's a terrible, terrible time when an entire community gets wiped out. And like I said, we went through it in 2017 where my entire town was part of a 65,000 person evacuation of the caribou, and I don't want to go through that again. So I have already planned, just so you guys know, I have already planned a bug out. I will let everybody on social media know if that happens. I will let our radio stations know, and hopefully it doesn't come this way, because the last time the entire West burned, north of us burned, and south of us burned, but the East didn't, and the Southeast didn't. Well, the fires are going southeast right now, and let's just hope that we get some rain, and God bless the firefighters, all right? God bless them. They have crews working out there. The water bombers were going heavily all over the area today, and they are working hard. They got one quick fire out that was from a lightning strike, and they've been kicking butt on doing their job, and man, it sucks going through this again. It really does. Not a fan of this. I'm going to be honest with you. If you've never been in a forest fire situation where, my entire night tonight, just so you know, and Captain Shirk, I'm really trying hard not to skip the news tonight, but I am, kind of going. But the entire show tonight, I'm thinking, how do I get out of here if something happens? if that happens, again, where am I going? Where do we go? Where do we go now? Where do we go? Where do we go now? Sweet Child of Mine. Come on, people. I'm going to throw a GNR lyric in there every chance I get. So, south of me, let's see. Highway 24, which goes the back way from my town to Kamloops, British Columbia, is closed due to forest fire. Highway 1, or Highway 97 to Cache Creek is open, but Highway 97 from Cache Creek to Kamloops is closed. Now, I can't go to Vancouver because Highway 1 is closed because Lytton just got wiped out. So I would have to try and make my way to the Coquihalla Highway if I wanted to get down to the Okanagan where my sister lives, which is my bug out for the southern part. So then we got to think about heading north. And you know what's north? More forest fires! Yes, more forest fires. Yeah. So, if by chance we do have to bug out, do not worry, we will be okay. All right? I'm one of these guys who, I'll go lay in a lake somewhere. I'm big enough to float. I am big enough to float. Maybe I'll go drive up to Alaska, to Alaska's greatest athlete's house, Emily Bigelow. We'll party there. So, anyways, I have no fear. I have no worry at this time, but I will keep all of you in the loop to what is going on with the current forest fire situation. And right now it's not pretty. It's not pretty at all. Forest fires suck. All right? But every now and again, Mother Nature decides to clean herself up. Okay? None of these fires so far have been started by humans. It's all been by lightning and heat. And, that's what we're going to do. I've got water out everywhere so the bees and the birds can have something to drink. Got it all taken care of there. Making sure my own pets are hydrated. Old Davy's hydrated. So I want to, for the people just coming in or tuning in, I just want to remind you, my SOR headquarters right now is not in danger. My area has not been put on evacuation alert. South of me, about 25 minutes to half an hour, has been. All right? If that fire were to continue northeast, it would not touch me. All right? I'm worried about the east. I'm not worried about the north. The west already burned. There's nothing really left there. All right? So, yes, tomorrow, which is will be the day that we set our bug-out bags. So I've made sure that I've got my passport in place, all my ID and everything, and we are getting prepared. Tomorrow's going to be a major preparation day for absolutely everything. Because in these situations, like in 2017, I do not want to be caught off guard. I don't. And when you're in a forest fire situation, you never know. Because people, if you don't know, they literally stop fighting the forest fires at night. They don't fight them at night. Forest fires move at night. And they grow. And then during the day, all the brave men and women, they go dig the trenches, they cut fire lines in the trees, and they are prepared. And they go battle. I mean, if anybody is a bunch of ass kickers, it's those firefighters on the ground who are literally sometimes hundreds of feet away from the blaze, like digging up trenches, those are the heroes. The heroes in the planes, the water bomber pilots. Fantastic heroes. Right? That's what we are worried about. That's what I'm concerned about. Is let's make sure that everybody there gets happy and healthy and is able to stay safe. You know, I couldn't do that job. Couldn't do that job at all. And once again, not in danger. My town is not in danger as of yet. Southeast of my town is a little hot right now. And the good news is the water bombers are hammering it. Hammering it. So, my advice to anybody who is in this situation, have a bug-out bag. Always have a bug-out bag. What do you put in there? You put in your prescriptions, your ID, like your passports. You put in any extra eyeglasses if you have them. You put in your memorables, your valuables, all right? You get rid of those. You make sure that you have water, enough water for about 14 days. You make sure you have water because you can live without food for a while, but you can't live without water. All right? You make sure that your gas tanks are full. That's a major, major mishap with a lot of people out there, is we all want to drive until we hit the E. Make sure your gas tanks are full. That is very important, to make sure the gas tank is full. And the rest is gravy. Whatever you can get in. As long as you got some clothes, as long as you got your pets, all right? As long as you have your ID, your prescriptions, if you have them, the rest is just gravy. Gravy. You know? Like, I'm looking around the studio here, and I'm thinking, what would I grab? Well, I got to grab a couple of the guitars. I've got to grab a couple of my ball caps that I have here. But that's it. Photos I would grab. That's it. And one laptop. So that way I can communicate with the world. But that's it. So that is the key, everyone. Make sure that if you are in a situation around, yes, I will grab my hot sauce bottles, Desert Clam. I will grab the hot sauce. You know, it really sucked if my house burned because, like, I like my fridge. I'm okay to get a new dishwasher or stove, but I really like my fridge. That's the first fridge I ever bought. You know what I'm saying? So, yes, and make sure you grab your phone chargers, too. Another important part. Grab every phone charger you can. Because you need those. All right? Phone chargers are important, especially in vehicles, especially if you have a newer model vehicle over the last 10 years. All right? They all have docking bays in them. So, that's what you need to grab. Water. And then if you have time to grab the heirlooms, okay, like the childhood toys that you've carried around forever, you know, the heirlooms, like the baby's first blanket or whatever, yes, you take that. That's important. But toys and bikes and anything else, don't worry about it. Get rid of it. Does not matter. Does not matter. Happy Canada Day, by the way. That's what it's all about. Canada Day. We'll be spending it. Hopefully not evacuating. No, but fingers crossed, we are safe, completely safe right now with the forest fire situation. It is close. Not close enough to be worried yet. Close enough to pay attention. I think that's a good way to put it. The fires are close enough to pay attention. And a couple of them are moving very rapidly. Those ones are way south of me. and I don't need to worry about those ones yet, but the other ones that are nearby will end up seeing the damage from the thunder and lightning storm earlier today, and we'll see what sparks up there, no pun intended. But yes, we are on alert for evacuation, just in case that alert gets put in place, and just don't want anybody to panic that we are all of a sudden going to be cut off the air or something like that. That's not going to happen. That is not going to happen. We're not going to be cut off the air. And once again, if by chance that we do have to evacuate, Lynn Wallington, our Saturday night host on our YouTube channel, will host for me. The schedule will be here. Everything will be here. You guys will be in the chat rooms. It's just the way it is. It's just the way it is. So I'm talking about it because this helps me not panic. Because even though it's not a panic situation, it is one of those situations where it's like, uh-oh, here we go again. This is kind of familiar. Kind of familiar. So we don't want it to be familiar. We don't want it to be something that rules what we are doing. We will continue with our shows. And let's see. Tomorrow night on the show, we got a good one. I know we got a good one tomorrow. Tomorrow night is going to be Dandy Meyer. Now, she's an ex-international model who is now talking about the fifth elements, the fifth dimension, ET contact, from her beautiful home in South Africa. I am very much looking forward to this. It's going to be a wonderful, wonderful time joining up with Dandy here on Spaced Out Radio. And we're going to have a lot of fun with her. We really are. So do us a favor, if you don't mind. Pray for rain. British Columbia needs it. I know California is going to need some probably in a month, if not now. But we need it. One town has already been destroyed. All right, if you're on Twitter, you could go to hashtag Lytton, Lytton, and check it on out. And it is quite freaky, quite scary. But we're going to fight this because that's what us Canadians do. That's what we do. Thank you so much for everybody for tuning on in. Big thank you. And I apologize to Captain Shirk for not getting to the news tonight. I just really needed to get this off my chest. Thank you to all my fellow Canadians. Happy Canada Day. Absolutely love you for tuning on in and bringing the Canadian woo to the table because we need it. And thank you to Mark Sims for being a wonderful guest telling us about his extraterrestrial contact story. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at home, at work, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone in our chat rooms tonight on YouTube, LGAB, Twitch, Spreaker, Revolution Radio, Facebook, Space Travelers Club, and everybody hanging out on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio.
I know you're out there somewhere.
Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us, because together, my friends,
we're watching.
We own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot. We need a favor. We need you to take us home. Yes, the Woo Train has docked for the night. But soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we've got room for them too. We stand on guard for thee. Happy birthday, Canada. Good night.